Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of Business Africa, a show that entails the economic news of the African continent. I am Amel Nga. Showcasing this issue, focus on the Rwandan economy as close to 6.8 million voters are preparing to elect their new president on August 4th. The Democratic Republic of Congo minimizes the recent withdrawal of the World Bank from the Ingata Dam project and relies on other partners. Finally, we will see the current difficulties of Nakumatt supermarkets in East Africa, mainly in Nairobi, Kenya. Rwanda is heading to the polls to elect a new president. Almost 6.8 million voters are expected to head to the ballot box to choose who out of the three candidates, including incumbent Paul Kagame, will preside over the destiny of this East African nation. Rwanda is now seen as a real economic success, with growth of about 7% over the past decade. Understand the growing economic situation of this country in this narrative done by Claire Muthinji and Evari.
As Rwanda approaches presidential elections on the 4th of August, its economic progress has come to the fore. The landlocked East African country, home to about 12 million people, has been a key player in political stability, economic growth and development in the region. Rwanda has managed to grow the economy at an average rate of 7% in the last decade, one of the fastest in Africa. According to the World Bank, Rwanda is the second easiest African country in which to do business. Rwanda's government has invested massively in infrastructure projects, ranging from boosting its national airline Rwandair, the ongoing construction of a new $800 million international airport, increasing its renewable energy footprint, growing its tourism sector, and rolling out about 4,500 kilometers of fiber optic cable. The government sees these projects as crucial for its economic blueprint of achieving high income status by the year 2050. All this attributed to President Paul Kagame's leadership. The 59-year-old has been president since the year 2000, but effectively in control since his last rebel force marched into Kigali in 1994 to end 100 days of genocide in which more than 800,000 ethnic Tutsis and moderate Hutus were killed. He is widely admired for restoring stability in Rwanda and presiding over the rapid economic growth and creating a relatively corruption-free government. Despite being poor in resources, Rwanda is a rising star in Africa for donors and investors, and Kagame has been feted as a visionary leader. However, Kagame has been accused by critics of being authoritarian and trampling on political freedoms.
And to stay within the framework of the general elections, especially presidential, we receive economist Odhiambo Ramogi, Chief Executive Officer of the Elim Consulting, based in Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, Mr. Odhiambo Ramogi, and welcome to Business Africa.
Hello.
Two East African countries, Kenya and Rwanda, are holding elections this August. How can we compare the economy of these two countries as Rwanda's growth has reached an average of 7% over the last decade, while that of Kenya has fluctuated around 5%?
Kenya is not, as it were, lagging behind because last year the country did 6%. That is still progress. But of course, as compared to Rwanda, it is lagging behind. And so it's a good thing that both nations are performing well, perhaps further confirming the fact that the structural adjustments in Africa are yielding fruit, even though they are still very unpopular. It is very difficult to say growth, especially in a developing economy, has been all-inclusive because growth would be driven by 1, 2, or 3 sectors at any given time. And in Kenya, there has been construction and a little bit of ICT. I think Rwanda also has invested significantly in ICT. And so in the long term, there is no such thing as a linear growth. It's all inclusive. In the short run, however, what works best will be favored to ensure that growth moves faster.
Kenya is going to an election in the midst of drought that affected maize crops and had an impact on inflation, among other challenges. How do you consider these factors during this period?
The drought, that we saw last year that, of course, whose impact spilled over to this year. This drove inflation upward and it made it a bit difficult for the central bank to rein in. But after the decision by the government to import some maize so that it can lower the price of maize in the country, that has since stabilized the inflation rate. We are looking at around 10-11%. So now, beyond that, in terms of the election, there was a law that was passed that, so to speak, regulates the amount of money that candidates use in the election.
Beyond the election, how do you perceive the economic growth of Kenya?
We are quite hopeful. Beyond now, I think the key factors will be oil exploration, how that plays out, and to the regional integration and the infrastructure development that is supposed to link the several countries in the region. That is a significant agenda going forward. Yes, this year might not be 6%. It might probably fall to something 5.5 or maybe a bit lower. But as from next year, we should be able to go back to 6.
Thank you, Odhiambo Ramogi, for the analysis. Ramogi is an economist and chief executive officer of Elim Consulting based in Nairobi, Kenya. Following the withdrawal of the World Bank from the construction project of the Inga Third Dam in the west of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the country turned to other partners, including the African Union and the African Development Bank. Jean-David Mihamle and Jeremy Fesayo have more.
The future of a gigantic construction project at the Inga Dam 3 in the DR Congo had generated a lot of questions after the withdrawal of the World Bank. But the Congolese authorities, who have regretted the departure, reassured the result of the initiative.
Je serai un peu brutal avec vous, il n'y a vraiment pas d'impact.
I will be a little brutal with you. The withdrawal of the World Bank really has no impact. The assistance of the World Bank was intended merely for complementary studies. When we say complementary, it means that there was already a study. Therefore, some of the studies were not necessary, but others which have been necessary will be taken in charge by the AFDB, including environmental and social studies.
Sur les impacts environnementaux et sociaux.
Kinshasa has asked the two concessionaires, Spain and China, to pool their resources to build a dam. The African Development Bank and the African Union, after the departure of the World Bank, have shown their interest for the project.
Sur le lot des études qui ont été engagées par le projet.
We have already looked at the studies which have been incurred by the project. 8 studies carried out. There are still 2 or 3. Therefore, it was necessary that we find a responsible mission. We give indications on the technical calendar from the point of view of the discussions with the dealers, developers. In the case of species, there are still 2 or 3 studies to be done, and these are the studies in reality which will determine the definitive target of the project. The estimated cost of Inga 3 is put at $13 billion. Once completed, the dam will produce between 5,000 megawatts and 8,000 megawatts.
For several weeks now, Nakumatt Supermarkets, which is very well known in East Africa, is facing increasing competition from new suppliers. We talk about it after the break.